I'm lucky that we got a few extra minutes for this session, obviously. So it's kind of funny just to reflect a bit on why we're actually here. And my reason for standing on this scene is to sort of try to dispel a few misconceptions about Kanban in general, to give you a few thinking tools to go out in the world and unleash your potential to build better workplaces. Simply to share, to tell stories from where I've been and to where I'm coming, and where I want to be. And a big part of my life, as a programmer, as a runner, and as a manager, is the pursuit of simplicity. And understanding and seeing all the false learning that's going on. As Salt was saying, it's very easy to get caught up in wrong ideas. For example, I get about 30 or so years of experience with bananas. Anyone else can match that? Cool. So we've got one more person that have about 30 years of experience with bananas. The rest of you, find a pair. And for 30 seconds, exchange tips on how you open a banana. Go on. Okay, thank you, everyone. Cool. There we go. Okay, so raise your hand if the instructions you were given on how to open a banana started at this end. Up with your hands. Up with your hands, I know. Don't be afraid. Okay, look around. Keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Look around. That's the staggering amount of bad advice present at this conference. The proper way to open a banana is to hold it and slightly squeeze this part. And then you can peel it without any problems. So, people, you do not understand bananas. What's the sort of chance that you will be understanding much about anything else? So, I'm a programmer and a computer scientist. And as people know, there's only two really hard things about computer science. Cache invalidation, that's all the relearning we need to do. Naming things, proper naming is really, really hard. And of course, you got off by one errors. So, I'll be talking about how these things also sort of relate to this problem of false learning and to Kanban. And who is this guy? So, Torbjo Gyllebring, that's my given name. You can find me on Twitter as drunkcod. You can address me as that too, it's fine. And a lot of people call me Toby. That's sort of almost preferred. Torbjörn is what my mom, IRS, and my consulting boss tells me, or calls me. I'm also ultra runner. I'm a reluctant development manager at a company called Synth. We build a platform for the market research industry to broker access to people that sort of can answer questions. A fair warning, you've already seen the amount of bad advice floating around out there. There's also, at any event with the name Kanban in it, a disease spreading. The disease is called Kanban hipsteritis. It's very contagious, and you might be afflicted, but there's an easy self-assessment test that I'm going to administer so you can test yourself and so you can test your friends and see if they're Kanban hipsters or not. If they turn out to be Kanban hipsters, feel compassion for them. They do not know any better. Okay, so easy question. They say stuff like this. We used to do X, but now we do Kanban. Anyone heard anyone say that? Oftentimes, X is pronounced Scrum. That's a clear sign of a Kanban hipster running around. They stand up on stage proclaiming things like, Kanban is a really simple process, something, and there's something about Post-its. That's also a Kanban hipster. Kanban is a software process that comes from manufacturing. Yeah, I'll leave that one. The problem with it is that it limits our understanding of what I think is a very important topic. And it leads to silly things like the war between Kanban and Agile, or Kanban and Scrum, where of course Kanban is the nice furry animal saving the world, and what that robot is, you'll figure it out. And this doesn't actually help anyone, and it doesn't help us as individuals create better software and a better tomorrow. But naming things. This is sort of me summarizing Kanban in a tweet. So, Kanban provides principles to successfully implement Kanban to manage and optimize the number of Kanban. Yeah, it's really that easy. I'll skip 2 of the other Kanbans that I could have put into this. But if we start talking like this, and hopefully this will actually make sense to you when you leave this session, but it's fairly simple to see how it could lead to some sort of misunderstanding. Because all of those Kanban, can they be the same thing? We start like this. Start at the top level with the Kanban method, as defined by David Anderson. That's a set of values and principles that I will cover later that help us provide principles to build successful Kanban systems. So we can build systems, we can build Kanban systems, manage them with the Kanban method. And what's the last Kanban? Well, the last Kanban is actually the work items, the tokens. And that's where you can see the historical influence of the Kanban, the visual card. So you have some sort of token that you put into a whip-limited pull system. That's a Kanban system. And then you take multiple such systems and you manage them according to a few principles that focus on creating flow. And you have the Kanban method. And these are all interconnecting, and we call them all of them Kanban. That's very important to be aware of, those distinctions, and knowing that the context radically change what sort of Kanban you're talking about. And saying, I'm doing Kanban, isn't really helpful. The reason we do this, the reason Taiichi Ohno, pictured, invented Kanban systems was to remove them. They aren't sacred in any way. If you've got a Kanban system, if you've got a number of Kanban tokens, most of the time, optimize means reduce. Because the less stuff you got in flight, the more you can actually put your system in a state where you can find new, innovative ways. You can stop hiding things. And you want to start removing them. For Toyota, removing the Kanban is actually moving towards their true north of single-piece continuous flow. And of course, as every powerful tool, it needs to come with a fair warning. Kanban can cause a variety of problems. Job dissatisfaction, seeing waste everywhere, actually getting a system that works, realizing that development isn't the bottleneck, making too much money. There's all sort of problems that could sort of appear if you start using Kanban. You can also put your system in a state where it's unstable, or where you get caught up in the tool instead of actually delivering value. So, getting started with Kanban. This is the official, as far as there's an official definition of what the Kanban method is. We have a few principles to guide us. We should agree to go for evolutionary change. That is in contrast to the big managed change that is often sold by those pushing an agile transformation, for example. We do not know what the exact change will look like. We don't know what the future state is. We'll find out. We'll create experiments to get there. We should respect the current roles, responsibilities, and titles. Essentially, this is the start where you are part. And we should encourage acts of leadership. And that's good advice. It's hard to act on. How does an act of leadership actually look like? But those are the principles. If we believe in this, we're ready to sort of start thinking about the practices. And I think that these are probably very familiar to you all. Visualize stuff, create a shared space, create a shared environment where you can actually touch the work. Limit the working process. Make sure that you manage the flows. Think more about flows and flow efficiency than utilization. Make stuff explicit. So start talking about your policies and start making sure that you actually understand each other, that you're communicating, that you're using the same language. That's where naming things is so important. And by naming something Kanban maybe, perhaps, wasn't the best idea ever. And improve collaboratively. Use experiments, design experiments to get the information you need to improve your process. Yeah, sure. Easy. We can do that. So tomorrow when you go home to your empty office space to build your new flashy product, what do? Do you start by implementing Kanban? Anyone? No, that's a trap. You can't. You can't start with Kanban. Look here, there's nothing saying, well, let's say start with what you got. If this is what you got nothing, right? So what do? You do what any civilized person do. You steal, borrow, or invent a process. And it's really easy. People sell processes in boxes. You can buy a Scrum box or XP box. I like the XP box. And I really much prefer the version 1 of the XP box. That's sort of my go-to solution if I don't got anything else. Or you can take whatever process you used when you were feeling great. But you take that process. And then, guided by the values and guided by the visualization, you start improving it. So you've stolen your process, you've found your path. You start talking about it, you start telling yourself stories about it. That's a sort of visualization too. Well, stuff end up here, then we moved into this column. After that, well, it should go here. One of the best tools for designing a Kanban system is, for any work item type, ask, where did this come from? And then you ask, and where will it be going? That's how you find your workflow. Walk with the work item and you'll find your flow. Make it explicit. Make sure that you actually know what's going on. But don't make it too explicit. So, who's familiar with Schrödinger's cat? The thing with Schrödinger's cat is that you got this cat trapped in a box, and you got some radioactive material that if it falls, if the half-time of it passes, then the cat will die, otherwise not. And sort of the paradox is that unless you open the box, the cat is both dead and alive at the same time. Uncertainty is like Schrödinger's cat. And making stuff explicit forces it into one of those states. Making stuff prematurely explicit, trying to be explicit at every point in your process, will kill kittens. You'll force them to die. Some of them you'll force to live. But please, think of the kittens. Don't be overly explicit. Be explicit when you really need to force a resolution, when you really need to know, and when the risk of not doing so is higher than the risk of not knowing. This is another way of actually viewing Kanban, through a different lens. A colleague of mine, after listening to me jabber on on the topic for a long while, said, "Oh, I get it. Kanban is like getting a shrink for your process." Yeah, that's it. We all need someone to tell us where we're going and how we're doing at times. Kanban can be that for your process. You select a process, and you go talk to Uncle Kanban about how to actually get things better. I promised stories. This will be one such story. So I was working with a team, or one of my current teams actually, but it was 2 years ago, so it feels like it was a completely different team. They were using a popular Agile method inspired by farm animals for some reason. So they had chicken, had pigs, and they had all that stuff. And they've been doing this for a few years, and they were getting really good at it. They're releasing software every 2 weeks. Their stakeholders aren't too annoyed with them. All in all, things sort of was going okay. But as people always tell us, we need to have a retrospective. We need to reflect on what we could do even better. And they had. And they had a common problem. A problem that I think that a lot of Scrum teams run into. They had a standing wave on their board. Essentially meaning that when 90% of the sprint or iteration was over, 90% of the stories were 90% done. Anyone been there? Yes, it's a quite common problem. You could say that it seems like the method in itself creates this because it's very predictable. So we're sitting there saying, once again, well, it seems like we're starting too much stuff and we're not really able to finish it, and we do not know what to do. So I was talking about this and I was thinking, is there anything in my Kanban box I can apply to help them reach their goals? So I started talking, and it turned out that they've been talking about pair programming for a while. And pair programming is really good. And the thing is that they had another problem. They weren't pairing either. Because in order for them to start 4 consecutive stories, or 4 stories at the same time, with 4 developers, well, if you don't got imaginary friends, you're not pairing. So I thought, maybe we can fix this. Let's say that we can't actually be developing more than half the number of stories that we got developers. Radical idea. So we put a number on the board, and then we actually redraw the board so we only had 2 swim lanes. Next retrospective. Come in 2 weeks later. So what's going on? Well, they're having a party. They're so bloody happy. They're eating popcorn. They're dancing on the tables. Why? Well, it turns out that one of the most ticked boxes, or one of the notes that got the most votes, was, we're finally doing Scrum. They abandoned iterations totally 2 months later. A month after that, all other teams in the company had abandoned iterations and learned to own their own processes. But the important part is that adding just some small thing, a small visualization, helped them reach their own goals. And that should be our goal, to help others reach their goals. Not to enforce a process, not to go in with a judgment about how better looks like, but help them find a way to reach their goals. There's another story that I'd like to tell, and this is about change agents and what you can do tomorrow, no matter what your position is. In order to tell this story, we need to go back in time. We need to go back in time to a different time, a different place. And we're in a country that's struck by famine. Resources are scarce, and people are sort of tending to themselves. Each and everyone in their own cottage, just fending off whoever comes too close, guarding what precious resources they have, no matter if that's potatoes, onions, or carrots, because they know that we only got this limited supply of stuff. I need to take care of myself. In such a land, in such a village, one day, 3 men appear. They walk in tattered clothes, and they walk up to the town square. You can see the vultures sitting inside their huts. And they can sense that this village is no different from all the others they've visited. But they think, oh well, it's been a long walk. We're hungry. We need to try to get someone to give us some food. So one of the men walks up to a house, knocks on the door. An old woman opens the door, says, "Dear ma'am, we're very hungry wanderers." "Okay, we're very hungry wanderers. Could you please spare some food?" And she says, "No, I don't got enough for myself already. Go away." This is repeated a few times. They don't get any help. But they've seen this before, and they know what needs to happen. So one of the men takes out a big cauldron, goes to a well, and fills it up. One of the other men starts a fire. And the third man walks away and finds a really nice stone. Probably quite similar to this one, a tasty stone. And he puts it in the cauldron, and they all sit down to watch it simmer. Time goes, and the people watching the town square sort of start to get a bit curious about the really odd people trying to cook a stone in the middle of the village. That old woman appears from her house, goes out to them and asks, "What the are you up to?" essentially. They look up and say, "We're brewing a soup, a fantastic soup." "Okay. And exactly what's in your fantastic soup?" "Ooh, it's a stone soup. It's a very filling kind." "A stone soup, you say?" "That's odd." "Yeah, it's rather odd. And you know what? Stone soup gets even better with a carrot." "A carrot, you say?" "Well, I want to see this. I can bake your carrot." So she goes out, fetches a carrot, gives it to the man. This law said, "Put it in." And then all of a sudden, there are 4 people watching the stone simmer. Another man comes out, asks, "What are you doing?" "You're cooking stone soup," says the woman. "Stone soup? That doesn't make any sense." "No, it doesn't make any sense. But it's starting to actually smell like food." "Well, that's odd." "Yes, it's odd. And you know what? As odd as it might seem, it's even better with a few potatoes." "Potatoes, you say? I got a few potatoes." And he goes away and fetches a few potatoes. Over time, they get more and more odd things thrown into their stone soup. And more of the village starts actually going around the cauldron. After a while, one of the men raises up, sniffs the soup and says, "Oh, I think the stone soup is good. It's done." And he starts handing out soup to all the villagers. For the first time in a very, very long time, all the villagers get a filling, warm meal. And when everyone has eaten, they say, "Oh, this is good. Yeah, it really is. We can help each other. And you know what the best part is? We can reuse the stone." This is a story about leadership. And it's a story about starting where you are. The wanderers actually assumed that reality as it was fine enough, and that the resources to bring about change for everyone's benefit was there. They visualized the progress, and they encouraged ideas for adding to the soup. This is what I want you to go home and do tomorrow. Because you'll get a pulling soup, and you meet less resistance that way than trying to just barging in and forcefully taking what you think you need. And actually, with that, I'm done, and we'll be running along.
Thank you. Thank you very much.